We will be speaking about PET recycling. And just a few words, why Logoplast and Ecoiberia, which are, of course, two companies. Logoplast is a rigid plastic manufacturer. It's a multinational company based in Portugal, but which has 77 plants all around the world. Just to give you an idea, we manufacture 270 packaging every second. And last year, Logoplast bought Ecoiberia, which is the main PET recycler in Portugal. So I got this double role. We will be speaking about mechanical PET recycling and a little bit of update and some perspective. So, an overview of the facts, first of all. 2022 and the very beginning of 2023, of course, we have had global supply chain issues and the Ukraine war, which has impacted especially the energy market. And this has created a lot of problems for PET recyclers. At the moment, the sustainability by circularity remains the topic for the plastic industry, for the brands. But even if recycling and recyclability keep being the agenda for 2023, they run misaligned with the targets and especially the industry state of the art. We, of course, have been speaking a lot about plastic taxes, new EPR systems, and especially regulation, and the impact that everything has had on PET recyclers. You have to know, PET, of course, is the hero of plastic recycling. We have been recycling for the past 30 years. It should be simple and easy, but unfortunately, it's not. I will speaking about market. I will not speaking about the sustainability, practically speaking. These are the prices of PET bales, recycled flakes, and pellets. So you see that big drop. At the beginning of 2021, there was the price of bales got to be more expensive of recycled material because there was such a struggle for recycled material. But now there is not. And such drop, okay, has been created by the what? By fundamentally lack of demand. It's very strange, isn't it? Why lack of demand for recycled PET? You didn't expect that. And especially extremely high conversion costs for PET recyclers. Well, that's why I said that we have misaligned objects. Because PET recyclers, especially in Europe, mechanical PET recyclers, have spent, practically speaking, the past 5 years to increase our PET capacity. You're speaking about new lines in 2022, new lines in 2023, which were installed but practically decided in 2020. Because you decide to buy a line in 2020 and you start to make it work in 2023. But collection has not grown, absolutely. And also during COVID, it was extremely difficult and it stopped. The bales quality and yield have decreased, absolutely. And energy costs have steeply risen. If the conversion cost last year was 350 euros, now it's about 550 euros, with dropping prices for recycled material. So what's the strategy for PET recyclers? Well, some have simply decided to go bankrupt. They started last year in the United States. There are some which are going to go bankrupt in UK, for example, this year. Or simply the smaller recycler, the medium companies have decided to sell, and to sell to brands directly or to sell to converters. What have PET recyclers decided to survive? Well, to import, because PET bottles raw material importing from Thailand, Vietnam, for third world countries has become a great temptation because it's less expensive. And we have had interesting specific guidelines which have been created to grant compliance this year for PET recycler to import flakes. But the new regulation 616 has come to impose feedstock control even on the European one. So import is becoming extremely uncertain, but also, for example, bottles which are collected through mixed waste is not allowed by the new regulation. Just to give you some numbers, in Portugal, 25% more or less of the bottles which are collected are not selectively collected, but are through mixed waste. Practically speaking, they couldn't be used by recycler to close the loop. What shall we do with them? And in Spain, the numbers are even higher, 30%. What should we do with that? Okay, probably apply for a novel technology process. It's expensive, it takes time. In these months, there's quite a lot of confusion and uncertainty. And, well, so the message that the PET recyclers have been passing to brands, to converters in the past years is not only there's no collection enough, which is something that we have heard from all the recyclers here, practically speaking, but that for the targets that we have for 2025, there will not be enough material. There's no collection, there's no enough material for the targets. Well, this is the message. And PET recyclers have also worked a lot lobbying in Brussels. And this is the reason why we have some new legislation. But what I want to say to you today is to wonder if the message is as threatening as it used to be for brands. Do brands care as much as they cared 5 years ago when there was a struggle for material? Does not seem so. Here are the targets for brands. Packaging, which is quite reasonable, 25%, 30% recycled content. A lot from fibers, 100%. And please remember that fibers, of course, use mostly bottles as well. The Ellen Carter Foundation report has shown to us, has demonstrated that, of course, the targets have not been reached yet and are very difficult to reach. So, this is the reason for the drop in prices. Mostly, brands have realized that it's too difficult. There's no material enough, it's too expensive, and it's extremely complex also to use PCR. You can't use PCR in all packaging. It's difficult. It's complicated. You use 30% PCR, but you reject 10% of the bottles just because of the black spots, for example, or because it creates holes, or because it has not enough oxygen barrier, for example. That's simply not possible. In 2022, investments in Europe for PET mechanical recycling have come in a form of mergers and acquisition much more than for real technical advantages. And brands of petrochemical companies, of course, have invested directly much more in other countries, in USA, in Australia, in Thailand, where, or third world countries, where the bias for the plastic were much more severe, not in Europe. So in Europe, it will be legislation, which will be the game changer, okay? And not economy, for sure. Because currently the demand for PCR has stopped, prices have dropped, investments in bottle mechanical recycling has stopped, trade to trace or fiber recycling is slowly increasing, but that's not easy. And technological progress concentrates in what? Concentrates in sorting or water and energy reduction. But there's not real new technology for mechanical recycling in itself, because the super cleaning process is always the same. And we have been using it for the past 15 years. So where money goes to, projects, goes to new polymers, biosolution, but not easy PET mechanical recycling. Well, so why has demand for PCR, again, decreased so much? We have already understood. And this is from ICIS Index for PET. It says, interest for PET remains muted throughout the chain, and substitution to virgin is ongoing, because virgin is less expensive. The forecast says that the rPET consumption will grow a lot for bottles, for sheets, for fibers, but it's just that at the moment, the supply cannot satisfy the demand, and the demand says, I will not be satisfied. I have to rethink about my targets. So the brands have understood it's difficult to use PCR. I will not have it. I have to slow down on the targets because the targets will be missed. And so, and another point, that the circularity and the sustainability is not only recycling. That's something else which is very evident in the marketing department. They've learned that it's difficult. They've learned that the solutions are not there currently. Scale pilots is still out of reach. So it's just too expensive, or it's too complicated, and there's new legislation. It's not easy. And what we see is that if before recyclable or X recycled content was easy to be used as a message, now more and more brands shift to, for example, assessing the impact packaging design through carbon footprint or life cycle assessment. Because it's not only recycled content or recyclability. Yesterday I was having breakfast with a Tetra Pak milk bottle. One part of it was completely dedicated to environmental messages. There was paper from sustainability sources. The plastic was bio. But on top of it, half, practically speaking, of top of the packaging was dedicated to carbon footprint. Neutral carbon footprint through purchase, of course, of actions. Well, legislation? Okay. Legislation concentrates on reduction, reuse, and again, recycling. Recyclable and recycled content, no matter how. This is the message that the legislation is imposing. This is the disconnection. this is the misalignment between what industry can do, what recyclers can do, and what is imposed. And various voices have alerted that the waste packaging recycling targets are not realistic. I would like that to be realistic. I would like to have, first of all, collection, the system. Equiberia, practically speaking, processes per day about 12 trucks of PET bales. Porto area can give to Equiberia 5 trucks maximum per week. So the capacity is there, the material is not. And we have told this to brands a lot, maybe too much. And the brands have decided to brag a little bit. And now PET recyclers are suffering from it. No demand, price dropping. This might be a surprise, isn't it? Well, anyway, let's see about the future perspective. I liked this one. This is from February 28th, so it's yesterday. When it comes to and it's from the World Economic Forum. When it comes to decarbonizing plastic, 2050 is closer than it seems. Yes, of course, but I think that 2025 is even closer, and we are not there. To meet ambitious net zero targets, net positive aspiration, plastic industry will rely on 3 key factors. Speed. Speed in what? I don't understand, because I've not seen speed. Not speed in new collection systems. Not speed in what? Even legislation. People and policy. Plastic producers in Europe are committed to the transition. Yes, of course, they have invested a lot of money. But much will depend on staying the course through current macroeconomic headwinds. The stagnation is killing PET recycling. But achieving these goals will ultimately form a competitive advantage for Europe. Yes, thank you, because maybe we will stop importing our PET from China, India, or Thailand. This is an exercise which was made in 2020, reshaping plastics by Economia. I want you to look at the numbers down there, these ones, the 60% and the 70%. So in 2020, okay, the target for 2050 was less 60% of incinerated waste. Less, and then, but this is interesting, more over 70% less virgin plastic produced from fossil fuels in 2050. It was a prediction and was a model in 2020. This one and this one. As it happened, not at all. We are manufacturing more and more packaging, and we will have more and more packaging in the future, in plastic, in glass, in paper, in tin. We are recycling a little bit more. We are collecting a little bit more. We are manufacturing some more in bio, but for sure not for the targets that were in that scheme. Well, let's finish with the bad news, and let's see what's come next and what's really happening and good for the PET recycler. There are, of course, changes which are connected with the eco-design and product design. I come from the research department of the Logoplast, so I see the new polymers. And I see also changes made towards, for example, monomaterials. Some shelf life, some product shelf life is being compromised. Let's say like this. So some brands are choosing monomaterials and they renounce to some of shelf life. And that's extremely positive. But what's most important for the PET recycler is not for the PET recycler, but was before, which is connection and sorting. The big advantages will come probably from digital watermarks or chemical tracers, which will help sorting. And you have there TOMRA and the Trinamix and intelligent IE sorting systems. The challenge is not to sort colors, is even not to sort polymers, but to understand from the packaging all the details which are additives. The elements of the label, the inks, the quality of the glue. And this passport of the packaging is the future for sorting. And this is what PET recyclers need, especially to separate food from non-food packaging. And then, of course, the great expectation is from chemical recycling. I will not speak about the chemical recycling because the person after me will speak about it, but it's there. Okay, and I've finished. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Yes.
Thank you. It's very interesting, really. Well, I mean, we constantly hear from beverage industry that they do not have enough PET to use. Probably you are aware that actually they are already asking since last year also the Commission to put like this kind of like a clear mechanism in the regulation that have the priority access to PET. They claim, they constantly complain, maybe partly is right, that all the recycled PET indeed comes from bottles. But you also mentioned in the beginning of your presentation that now demand for PET dropped down. Yeah, so that's for me kind of like, you know, contradiction. If you can explain why is it? Is it also comes from beverage, or is it just, I know that it's used a lot in
I know
textiles.
that it's a controversy. Probably it will be just, you know, these past months. But what happened was that the struggle for good quality rPET by major brands has led them to stock material, let's imagine, for 8 months. And then, of course, there was stagnation and the packaging industry stopped. So there's no demand for new PET to be manufactured at this very moment. And lines are idle, waiting for a new demand. And the consequence is that prices dropping, but also, and now I'm speaking as a converter, so someone who is in the middle and has connection with the brands, I've seen many projects which last year had been launched to increase the recycled content, for example, from 30 to 50, which have been postponed. And why? Because they are waiting for the legislation.
I would like to ask you about the, if you think that can be a system, a global system for all PET package or all plastic package to identify like the digital system, but only one, because if you are starting to have
we are starting to have too many. We are starting to have too many systems, actually. Yes, you're right. There's Holy Grail, there's the tracers, etc. Probably one conflicting with the other. I hope that there will be one system, but I don't know who will decide which one it will be. It's a hope, of course.
Because we don't, well, I think we don't see that on the regulation.
No, there's
And
not in the regulation.
It's
and
important.
you're speaking about systems which are, of course, behind industry and technology and investments. And it's again difficult that a regulation could tell a brand, use Holy Grail or use this tracer. It's difficult. Holy Grail will be voluntary, okay? And artificial intelligence is, for me, the new hope, okay? Because does not imply choices. Thank you.